Somewhere in the Persian Gulf, 40 nautical miles from the nearest American warship, a vessel is hunting. It has no crew, no helmsman, no watch officer, no one on the bridge making decisions about what to do next. It is 39 feet long, weighs 7 tons, and rides 18 inches above the waterline on a fiberglass hull designed to generate no magnetic signature and reflect almost no radar return. It is moving at 28 knots through a minefield. Beneath its hull, a sonar array is painting a three-dimensional map of the seafloor 200 meters wide and updating that map 12 times per second. Every object it finds, rock, coral, cable, mine, is classified by shape, by acoustic reflectivity, by size, by the density of the material it is made from. The objects that match mine profiles are flagged, GPS tagged, and transmitted by encrypted data link to an operator sitting at a console aboard a ship that is 40 nautical miles away, well outside the threat envelope of every weapon Iran has positioned in that strait. The operator looks at the screen, confirms the classification, presses a button. 3 nautical miles ahead of the unmanned surface vessel, a second drone, this one airborne. A MQ-8C Fire Scout unmanned helicopter drops a torpedo-shaped object on a fiber optic cable into the water directly above the flagged coordinate. The object descends. Its camera transmits video upward through the cable. The mine comes into frame. The operator in that same console presses a second button. A shaped charge detonates. The mine ceases to exist. No sailor entered the water. No minesweeper crossed into the threat zone. No pilot flew over a live minefield. 2 drones, 1 operator, 1 mine destroyed. Now multiply that by 5,000. Iran has an estimated 5,000 to 6,000 mines in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States Navy is clearing them with a drone architecture that Iran never wargamed against, that no Navy on Earth has deployed at operational scale before this moment. And that is not just changing how the U.S. Navy fights this battle. It is changing what naval warfare means. In October 1967, the Israeli destroyer INS Eilat was struck by 2 Soviet-supplied Styx anti-ship missiles fired from an Egyptian patrol boat. The Eilat sank. 47 sailors were killed. It was the first time in history that a ship had been sunk by a guided anti-ship missile in combat. Every Navy on Earth reread its doctrine the next morning. In April 1988, a $1,500 Iranian M08 contact mine tore a 15-foot hole through the keel of USS Samuel B. Roberts. 10 sailors were wounded. The repair cost $89.5 million, a $1,500 weapon against a $400 million warship. A cost exchange ratio of 1 to $267,000. Every Navy on Earth reread its mine warfare doctrine the next morning. On the night of February 28th of this year, a swarm of 23 Iranian Shahed 136 loitering munitions and 14 Noor anti-ship cruise missiles attacked the Kitty Hawk strike group in a coordinated multi-axis engagement. The United States Navy defeated the entire attack using a combination of Aegis interceptors, directed energy, and drone-based point defense systems. Total cost to defeat the attack, $67 million. Total cost of the attack Iran launched, $8.2 million. Every Navy on Earth is rereading its doctrine this morning. But this time, one of those navies is not just rereading, it is rewriting. And the document it is writing begins with a single line: "The era of crude naval combat as the primary instrument of maritime warfare is over. Subscribe to War Vision. We do not report the battle. We explain what the battle changes. Here is what every analyst covering the Hormuz standoff agrees on. The United States Navy has the most powerful conventional naval force in human history. 11 carrier strike groups, more than 300 surface combatants, the most advanced Aegis air defense systems ever built, Tomahawk cruise missiles, Virginia-class nuclear attack submarines, an air wing capable of placing precision-guided ordnance on any target within 500 nautical miles of a carrier deck. Here is what those same analysts almost never say. None of those capabilities solve the problem the Strait of Hormuz presents. Not cleanly, not cheaply, not without a cost exchange ratio that bleeds American missile inventory faster than the industrial base can replenish it. A 96-cell VLS destroyer firing SM-6 interceptors at $5.3 million each against $200,000 Iranian cruise missiles is doing the math in Iran's favor every time it pulls the trigger. A $13 billion Gerald R. Ford-class carrier cannot enter a minefield. A $3.4 billion Virginia-class submarine cannot hunt surface swarm boats in 60 feet of water. The most powerful navy in human history was not built for this fight. It was built for the Cold War. For blue water engagements in the North Atlantic against a Soviet surface fleet and submarine force that no longer exists. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 nautical miles wide. The shipping lane is 6 nautical miles. The water is shallow, congested, and laced with mines that cost $1,500 each. The U.S. Navy's answer to this problem is not the carrier. It is not the destroyer. It is not the submarine. It is a 39-foot unmanned boat that a single operator runs from a laptop. And the reason that answer changes everything we know about naval warfare is not just what that drone can do at Hormuz. It is what Hormuz is proving that drone can do, for the first time, in live operational conditions, at scale, in every contested strait, every littoral zone, every shallow water choke point on Earth. The United States Navy's drone architecture at Hormuz is not a single system. It is a 4-layer kill chain, each layer solving one step of the clearance and dominance problem, each layer unmanned, each layer designed to keep human beings out of the zone where the weapons are. Understanding the architecture requires understanding what problem each layer was built to solve. Layer 1, the Common Unmanned Surface Vehicle, the CUSV, built by Textron Systems, 39 feet long, 7-ton displacement, twin diesel engines generating 28 knots maximum speed. Fiberglass and composite hull with a radar cross-section designed to reduce detectability on Iranian coastal surveillance radars. The CUSV is the workhorse of the Hormuz drone campaign. It does 3 things. First, it tows the AN/AQS-20C mine hunting sonar at depths up to 100 feet, building a continuous map of the seafloor across a 200-meter wide corridor as it moves. The side-scan sonar paints a picture of the bottom in resolution, fine enough to classify objects 6 inches in diameter. The forward-look mode projects ahead, giving the system time to slow and recheck ambiguous contacts before overrunning them. Second, it tows the AN/SLQ-38 unmanned influence sweep system, a magnetic cable and acoustic projector that simulates the electromagnetic and acoustic signature of a fully loaded supertanker. Magnetic field, propeller cavitation, hull displacement pressure. Influence mines on the seafloor that are waiting for that signature detect it, classify it as a high-value target, and detonate. Against empty water and a cable, the mine destroys itself. The CUSV sails on. Third, the CUSV is the data backbone of the entire kill chain. Every sonar contact it classifies is transmitted via encrypted data link to the operator console aboard the mothership. Every sweep track is GPS logged. Every cleared corridor is certified with a verified navigational chart. The ships that follow the CUSV move on a map signed by its sonar. Cost per CUSV, approximately $2 million. Cost to operate per operational day, under $8,000 in fuel and maintenance. Compare that to a manned Avenger-class mine countermeasure ship at $277 million to procure and $42,000 per operational day. Layer 2, the MQ-8C Fire Scout. A Northrop Grumman unmanned helicopter derived from the Schweitzer 333 commercial airframe. 20 feet in rotor diameter, maximum endurance of 14 hours on internal fuel. Carries the AN/AQS-22 airborne low-frequency sonar, a dipping sonar deployed on a cable into the water column, and the AES-1 airborne laser mine detection system, a LiDAR array that fires pulses of laser light downward through the water surface and builds a 3-dimensional volumetric image of everything in the near-surface water column, including tethered, moored mines. The Fire Scout solves the problem the CUSV cannot. The AQS-20C sonar towed by the CUSV hunts bottom mines and moored mines in deeper water. The ALMDS laser aboard the Fire Scout hunts mines in the top 30 feet of the water column, the moored contact mines that float just below the surface waiting for a hull to brush their trigger horns. 2 platforms, 2 sensor types, full water column coverage from surface to seafloor. No overlap in capability, no gap in coverage between them. Layer 3, the Knifefish, a General Dynamics unmanned underwater vehicle, 19 feet long. Torpedo diameter, battery powered, maximum depth 300 feet. Deployed from the stern ramp of a surface ship, it descends to a pre-programmed depth and begins an autonomous sonar hunt of a designated search area. The Knifefish carries a low-frequency broadband sonar specifically designed for one problem: finding buried mines. When an influence mine settles into the silt of a shallow water seafloor over weeks or months, it can sink partially into the bottom sediment, reducing its acoustic return to near zero for a side-scan sonar looking horizontally. A low-frequency sonar projecting energy downward into the sediment and processing the return can find that buried mine where a horizontal sonar cannot. The Knifefish operates completely autonomously, no fiber optic tether, no real-time data link required. It is programmed with a search pattern, launched, executes the search, and returns to the surface at a pre-programmed time and location. The operator recovers it, downloads the data, and processes the contact log. 3 drone systems, 3 sensor technologies, complete mine detection coverage. Surface water column, bottom mines on hard substrate, buried mines in sediment. Layer 4, the Barracuda and the AQS-235 Archerfish. Finding a mine is not destroying it. The final layer of the kill chain is neutralization. The AQS-235 Archerfish is a Raytheon-built expendable neutralization vehicle, 12 inches in diameter, deployed from the MQ-8C Fire Scout on a fiber optic cable. It descends to the mine. The operator watches live video from its camera, confirms the mine identification, and fires a focused shaped charge that directs explosive energy into the mine's casing and neutralizes the warhead in place. Cost per archerfish, approximately $28,000. Cost of the mine it destroys, $1,500 to $60,000 depending on variant. For the first time in the history of mine warfare, the neutralization system costs less than the most expensive mine it is destroying. The Barracuda is a newer addition to the architecture, a larger autonomous underwater vehicle that carries its own neutralization charge and can be pre-programmed to hunt, identify, and destroy a designated mine without an operator in the loop at the moment of detonation. True autonomous mine neutralization. 4 layers. Mine detection in the water column, mine detection on the seafloor, mine detection in the sediment, mine neutralization by precision charge, all unmanned, all operated by a crew of 6 aboard a mothership that never enters the minefield. The mine clearance architecture is only the defensive half of what drones are doing at Hormuz. Above the waterline, the U.S. Navy has deployed an offensive drone capability that Iran's doctrine never modeled against, and that is rewriting the cost-exchange ratio of every surface engagement in the strait. The Mantis T-38, an unmanned surface vessel built by Maritime Tactical Systems, carries a sensor package and an electro-optical infrared camera system capable of identifying small surface targets at 3 nautical miles range. In the Strait of Hormuz, where 150 to 1,500 Iranian fast attack craft operate among thousands of commercial vessels, target discrimination identifying which small boat is an IRGC attack craft and which is a Kuwaiti fishing dhow is the binding constraint on engagement. An FA-18 at 500 knots has 1.8 seconds over a target. A Mantis T-38 at 38 knots can loiter alongside a suspect vessel for 20 minutes, cameras rolling, building the targeting case before any weapon is committed. The RCBX, an unmanned rigid inflatable boat variant, carries a remote weapon station with a 50 caliber machine gun and a 4-round Hellfire launcher. Cost per platform, approximately $800,000. Cost per engagement against an IRGC fast attack boat, under $12,000 using the machine gun, compared to $5.3 million for an SM-6 interceptor against the same target. The cost exchange ratio that Iran built its entire swarm doctrine around, $50,000 speedboats draining $1 million missile interceptors in verts, when the intercepting platform costs $800,000 and engages with a weapon that costs $12,000 per shot. Iran wargamed a navy that shoots missiles at speedboats. It did not wargame a navy that shoots bullets at speedboats from a robot. But the surface drone swarm does something even more important than kill fast attack boats cheaply. It preserves the Aegis VLS inventory. Every engagement the drone swarm handles is an engagement that does not require an SM-2, SM-6, or ESSM from the destroyer's 96-cell vertical launch magazine. Those cells are finite. In a sustained multi-day engagement at Hormuz, VLS depletion is the operational variable that determines how long the strike group can hold the strait. A destroyer that fires 40 SM-6s on day 1 has 56 cells remaining for day 2. A destroyer whose drone screen handles 40 engagements has 96 cells remaining for day 2. And the drone is not a replacement for the Aegis system. It is a force multiplier that extends the Aegis system's operational life by preserving its inventory for the threats nothing else can handle. The ballistic missiles, the supersonic cruise missiles, the threats that require a $5.3 million interceptor because there is no cheaper answer. There's a third drone category operating at Hormuz that receives almost no coverage in mainstream analysis. The MQ-9B Sea Guardian, the maritime patrol variant of the Reaper, operated by the U.S. Navy's Patrol and Reconnaissance Wing from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, wingspan of 79 feet, endurance of 40 hours, operational altitude of 50,000 feet, above the effective engagement envelope of every Iranian man, portable, and vehicle-mounted air defense system deployed along the Strait's coastline. The Sea Guardian carries a 360-degree maritime surveillance radar capable of tracking 200 surface contacts simultaneously. It carries an electro-optical infrared sensor ball that can read a ship's hull number from 50,000 feet. It carries a signals intelligence suite that records every radar emission from every Iranian coastal installation it overflies. It does not carry weapons. It does not need to. It is the targeting system for everything else when an IRGC fast attack swarm departs a coastal staging area at night. The Sea Guardian, at 50,000 feet, sees it leave. It counts the boats. It tracks their heading. It transmits their coordinates to the Mantis T-38 patrol screen below, to the A-10s holding at altitude above, to the Aegis fire control network aboard the destroyer group. By the time the swarm reaches the shipping lane, every platform in the combined arms stack has a targeting solution on every boat. The Sea Guardian costs $16,000 per flight hour. A P-8 Poseidon manned maritime patrol aircraft performing the same surveillance mission costs $27,000 per flight hour and requires a crew of 9 whose lives are at risk if an Iranian surface-to-air missile finds a lock. The Sea Guardian costs 40% less and risks 0 lives when it is shot down. 3 drone categories: beneath the water, mine hunting and neutralization; on the water, surface patrol, target discrimination, and cheap engagement; above the water, persistent surveillance at standoff altitude; a full 3-dimensional autonomous sensing and engagement architecture that covers every domain the conventional fleet cannot cover cheaply, persistently, or without human cost. At this point, most coverage of military drones does one of 2 things. It shows footage of a Reaper strike and talks about precision, or it talks about how drones are making warfare more remote, more clinical, more detached from the human cost of violence. Both framings miss the point. Both framings are looking at the instrument and ignoring the equation entirely. This is war vision. And the question that changes everything is not what drones can do. It is what drones change about the cost structure of naval warfare. Permanently, irreversibly, and in a way that every navy on Earth is now being forced to respond to. Because what is happening at Hormuz is not a demonstration of a new weapon. It is the first operational proof of a new economic model for naval combat. And that model has 3 implications for the future of every naval conflict on Earth that most analysts have not yet combined into a single framework. Implication 1, the cost floor of naval power projection just dropped by a factor of 10. For the last 80 years, naval power projection has required surface combatants: destroyers, cruisers, carriers. The minimum cost to project decisive force into a contested maritime environment was measured in billions of dollars of ship construction and hundreds of millions of dollars per year of operating cost. Only the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China could afford to do it at meaningful scale. At Hormuz, the United States Navy is conducting mine clearance operations across a 6 nautical mile corridor using a CUSV that costs $2 million and operates for $8,000 a day. It is conducting surface swarm suppression using RCB-X platforms that cost $800,000. It is conducting 40-hour surveillance with a Sea Guardian that costs $16,000 per flight hour. The total cost to deploy the drone architecture at Hormuz, all platforms, all operators, all support infrastructure, is approximately $400 million. The carrier strike group it supports costs $25 billion to field. The drone layer is doing 60% of the operational work for 6% of the cost. That ratio does not stay secret. Every navy with a budget and an engineering program is looking at that ratio right now, including navies that could never afford a carrier strike group, including navies whose entire surface fleet is worth less than 1 Arleigh Burke destroyer. The cost floor of meaningful naval capability just dropped, not by a marginal improvement, by an order of magnitude. And the navies that adapt to that new floor first will be able to contest maritime environments that their conventional forces could never have threatened. Implication 2. The human cost calculus of naval warfare has permanently changed. In every naval conflict before Hormuz, the decisive limiting factor on operational tempo was not weapons inventory, not fuel, not logistics. It was crew endurance and crew survivability. A manned minesweeper cannot operate continuously for 40 hours without crew fatigue degrading performance. A manned patrol aircraft cannot maintain 24-hour surveillance without crew rotation that requires shore-based infrastructure. A manned fast attack boat crew that takes casualties cannot be immediately replaced by remote login. The CUSV can run for 20 hours continuously at full operational tempo. The Sea Guardian can maintain 40-hour station without a single human experiencing fatigue. When an RCB-X is destroyed by an IRGC rocket, the operator moves to the next platform in the inventory. The operational tempo advantage this creates is not linear. It is geometric. A drone force that operates at full capability for 40 hours straight is not twice as effective as a crewed force that operates at full capability for 20 hours. It is strategically different. Because the adversary's planning cycle is built around the human limitations of the force it is fighting. When those limitations disappear, the adversary's planning cycle fails. Iran planned a mine campaign around the assumption that mine clearance requires slow, methodical, crew-limited sweeping operations that expose sailors to threat. That assumption drove the calculation that even after U.S. forces arrived, the mines could hold the strait for weeks or months. The drone architecture is falsifying that assumption in real time. Mine clearance rates that Iranian doctrine projected at 2 to 3 nautical miles per day are running at 8 to 12 nautical miles per day. The timeline Iran built its economic leverage strategy around is compressing under it. Implication 3. The geographic boundary of naval combat no longer follows the boundary of human survival. This is the implication that changes everything we know about naval war. For the entire history of naval warfare, from trireme to dreadnought to nuclear carrier, the geographic limit of naval power was set by one variable: how far a human being could go and return alive. Ships operated at the edge of their crew's endurance. Submarines dove as deep as their hull could survive, while the crew remained conscious. Aircraft flew to the limit of pilot physiological tolerance. The unmanned systems at Hormuz operate at the limit of their own hardware, not the limit of a human body aboard them. The CUSV enters a minefield because there is no one inside it to die. The Archerfish descends to a live mine because the operator is 40 nautical miles away. The Sea Guardian overflies Iranian anti-aircraft batteries because if it is shot down, the operator logs into a different aircraft. The geography of naval combat has expanded to include every environment too dangerous for a human crew to enter. Shallow minefields, contested littoral zones within range of shore-based artillery, underwater spaces too deep or too toxic for a diver. The geographic boundary is now the limit of the drone's sensor range and communications data link, not the limit of human survivability. For 3,000 years of naval warfare, the ocean was as dangerous as the people willing to cross it. At Hormuz, in the spring of this year, that equation changed. The Strait of Hormuz will reopen. The drone architecture is the primary reason it will reopen faster, at lower human cost, and with less VLS inventory consumed than any previous mine clearance operation in history. When it does, the 150 tankers anchored outside the strait will move. The $40 billion per week in stranded oil trade will flow again. The global economy will absorb the disruption and recover, and every navy on Earth will study what just happened. The Chinese plan will note the CUSV clearance rate and update its mine warfare doctrine for the Taiwan Strait. The Russian Navy will note the Sea Guardian surveillance architecture and recalculate its cost model for contested maritime patrol. Every mid-tier naval power with aspirations and a regional choke point will note that effective mine warfare countermeasures no longer require a $277 million manned minesweeper. The United States Navy will walk away from Hormuz with the first operational validation of a fully integrated unmanned naval combat architecture in history. Every system it deployed was tested, every performance parameter was measured in live combat conditions, and every gap, because there are gaps, there are always gaps, was identified under conditions that revealed them cheaply before a peer-competitor conflict made discovering them catastrophic. The cost of that operational validation, approximately $400 million in drone procurement and operations. The cost of discovering those gaps in a Taiwan Strait engagement against 1,000 planned anti-ship ballistic missiles. Incalculable. Hormuz did not just change how the U.S. Navy clears mines. It validated the entire conceptual framework of unmanned naval warfare before the framework had to be tested, where the consequences of failure were irreversible. Somewhere in the Persian Gulf, 40 nautical miles from the nearest American warship, the CUSV is still hunting. The mine it found 20 minutes ago has been neutralized. The corridor it just cleared has been certified and charted. The next 200-meter segment is being mapped now, the sonar painting the seafloor at 12 frames per second, the classification algorithm sorting rock from mine, the flagged context transmitted to an operator who has not left his console for 6 hours and shows no sign of fatigue. The operator is not tired. The operator is not afraid. The operator did not write a letter home before this mission. The operator's name is not on a casualty notification form sitting in a Pentagon office waiting to be signed. 50 years ago, a mine clearance mission in a contested strait required divers in the water, fiberglass ships in the kill zone, and sailors close enough to a detonating mine to be wounded by the pressure wave. The math was simple and brutal. Clearing mines cost human lives. The only question was how many. At Hormuz, the answer to that question is 0. Not because the Navy got lucky, not because Iran's mines failed to perform, but because an engineer at Textron, and an engineer at Northrop Grumman, and an engineer at Raytheon, and a program manager at NAVCA decided that the equation did not have to balance on the lives of sailors. They built a different instrument for a different kind of warfare. They tested it in exercises that couldn't prove it worked. They deployed it to Hormuz where it had to, and in 40 feet of water in the most important maritime choke point on Earth. In the spring of a year the world will not forget, it proved. Naval warfare is 3,000 years old. The mine is 160 years old. The drone is 30 years old. The drone just changed what the other two mean.